In this lesson, we'll learn about some additional tools that'll help us reshape objects and paths in different ways. Okay, so in previous lessons we learned about some transforming tools for transforming paths and objects. Let's talk about some reshaping tools. Now, essentially, the basic shape tools like the ellipse tool and the rectangle tool will help you build just some basic shapes on which you can build whatever you're drawing. Now, let's talk about these reshaping tools. The first one I'm going to talk to you about is called the reshape tool. It's actually underneath the scale tool here, and we can find that here. It looks like a little arrow bending a path. Let's go ahead and grab that tool, and see here it looks like sort of a little gray arrow. Let's go ahead and just use our control modifier key to come in here and select these 4 basic curving paths. And what the reshape tool is going to allow you to do is it's going to allow you to stretch parts of a path without distorting the overall shape. And let me just come in and grab a part of this first path, and I'll show you what that does. Let's see here. If we mouse over that, notice that a little square appears next to my cursor. Now, let me mouse over here so you can see that a little better. Now, what the reshape tool does is it's going to drop what's called a focal point, and anytime you click on a path, it's going to add a focal point to that path, and that's going to be where the reshaping takes place. Let me go ahead and just grab this path, and I'm going to pull it down here. You need to make sure that that cursor has a little square over it as you click on it, or else you'll miss the path. See how I'm actually reshaping that path? And you know, for the most part, it's actually maintaining its overall appearance, having that general curve, but we've actually reshaped it some. Now notice what's left over after I've clicked and dragged on this path. We have that little bitty selected anchor point. So this tool actually will add an anchor point as a focal point wherever you click. Now let me just undo that, because you can actually click on here and then hold shift and then click again and add multiple focal points to your path. And you can reshape that path based on however many focal points you want to go ahead and add to it. So that is the reshape tool. Now let me just go ahead and deselect these here. Now these other tools I'm going to show you are in a little different location here within our tool panel, and a lot of people have called these tools liquefying tools because that's sort of what they do to shapes. So I've got just some basic shapes down here, and we're going to practice using some of these tools on these shapes. Now there's quite a few shapes here nested underneath this tool. Now the very first tool you're going to see is probably this width tool. Now we're not actually going to get into the width tool in this lesson. I've got a whole lesson planned out on that tool coming up for you. But let's go ahead and detach this tool set here from our tool panel so we can work with these. Now the first tool here we're going to talk about is going to be the warp tool, and that's this little hand that looks like it has a finger pushing something. We can actually double click on this tool to access the options, but take note that the keyboard shortcut is Shift R. Now I use these tools personally so infrequently that I don't know that keyboard shortcut by heart, but depending on what you're creating, one of these tools may really help you achieve the object you're looking for. So let's go through some of these options here. Now these global brush dimensions options, these are going to be virtually the same for all these tools. It's down here in this second area where the options are going to change. So we'll talk about these options briefly here. The height and the width options here, those are going to adjust the cursor size, and the angle is going to actually adjust the cursor orientation. Right now it's set to 0 degrees. Now the intensity is a little different. It actually changes, or excuse me, controls the rate of change. Now the higher the percentage here, the faster this liquefy effect, or this warping effect, is going to be applied with this tool. Now if we were to check this box that says use pen pressure, this intensity adjustment would actually be ignored, and it would be completely based on the pen pressure of our tablet. So let's go ahead and look at these warping options down below. The first option you see is detail. Now the detail is actually going to control the distance between new anchor points that are added to a shape by using this tool on it. Now the higher this is, the closer those anchor points are going to be together. Now I'm going to go ahead and leave these controls at their defaults just so you can sort of see what this tool does. But the simplify tool is actually going to reduce the amount of excessive anchor points that are added. So we can actually control that here. We also have a show brush size option, which actually will give you a little preview of the brush size as you're using the tool. So let's go ahead and hit OK on these options. And I'm actually going to go ahead and get rid of these paths we just played with the reshape tool, and I'm going to go ahead and make another set of these basic shapes here. just by holding down my Control modifier key and then my Alt modifier key to switch to my selection tool and make a copy of these shapes. So let's go ahead and zoom in on this first square here, this orange square, and let's deselect the shapes. Now you can see here my cursor is rather large, so one thing we may want to do is go ahead and shrink that down. We're working on a smaller shape here. Now we can actually hold down the Alt key by using any of these tools, and then we can just click on our canvas and drag, and we're actually going to resize the brush tip shape. We're actually going to pinch it in using just the Alt key. So you can see here if I pull down with my stylus on my tablet, we're pinching it in like so. If I were to pull to the left, we're going to pinch it in the other way. So let's go ahead and leave it right there at a circle, and let's just go ahead and shrink that down. Now while I'm holding Alt, you can also see that there is a little bitty change in the status icon in the center of this circle. We have our cursor has sort of a little corner section in the bottom right hand corner of it. Now I'm going to go ahead and add Shift to my modifier keys as well as this Alt key, and then I'm going to go ahead and pull down. Actually, I'm pulling to the left to shrink down the brush size, and if I pull to the right, I can increase the brush size. So we can do both of those here on the fly. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but let's go ahead and apply this warp effect to this shape. So as I paint this tool over our shape here, you can see that nothing's happening. What we need to do is we need to actually select this shape before we start painting over it. So let's go ahead and select the shape, and let's go ahead and just drag this tool down into it. You can see I'm warping this shape now. Let me go ahead and just increase the size of my brush some, and let's take a little bigger swipe at this. So you can see here what the warp tool is doing. It's acting like you're basically pressing a finger into the shape and liquefying it and warping it in that way. So let's go ahead and move on here, and we'll talk about this next tool. I'm going to deselect that tool right now. Let's go ahead and double click on this tool. This is going to be the twirl tool. Alright, so really a lot of the same options that we looked at in the previous options dialog, but we have the addition of this twirl rate. Now this twirl rate can be as low as a negative 180 degrees or as high as a positive 180 degrees. Now the closer you are to either one of these caps, whether it be negative 180 or positive 180, the faster that this twirl tool is going to work. Now the difference here is that if we're at a negative 180, it's going to twirl clockwise, whereas if we're at a positive 180, it's going to twirl counterclockwise. So the closer we get to 0, the slower this twirl rate is actually going to go. So let me go ahead and just set this at something fairly small right now. Let's set it around 20. And let's go ahead and hit OK. I'm going to go ahead and select this circle right here, or this ellipse, and let's go ahead and maybe just go ahead and twirl this just a little bit. You can see what the effect of the twirl tool does. So essentially we are liquefying this shape just in a little bit different fashion. So this could be kind of cool to actually come over and maybe create some decorative corner pieces on a more geometric shape. Depends on exactly what you're going for. So that's the twirl tool. Let's come in here now and take a look at one more. Alright, so we've got a few more tools here. And the little icon next to the tool is probably going to give you a good indication of the type of effect that it's going to have. For example, we have the pucker tool, which is going to pucker the sides in, the bloat tool, which is going to bloat the sides out. We have the scallop tool, we have the crystallize tool, and the wrinkle tool. Now, let's just go ahead and take a look at one more. I'm not going to go through all of these for you. I'm going to let you take some time to experiment with these on your own. Let's go ahead and take a look at the wrinkle tool here. Let me just go ahead and take a look at the options here for the wrinkle tool by double clicking on it. You can see here there's a few more options down here under wrinkle options. We've got a horizontal and vertical option. Now this is actually going to control how far apart the control points for this tool are placed. So this, there's going to be control points that are generated with this tool, and that's going to control how far apart they are. Now, right now we're just going to do vertical wrinkles, so we're not doing horizontal wrinkles. We can adjust the complexity, the detail. We can decide if the brush is going to actually affect anchor points or not by clicking this option. And then right here we've got options for the brush effects tangent handles. Now tangent handles are another name for Bezier handles. So let's just go ahead and hit OK on these, and let's see what this wrinkle tool does. If we drag this along this top edge of this square, you can see that it's created some wrinkles. That was one pass. Let's go ahead and make another pass. You can see the more passes we make, the more wrinkled it's getting. That was what, 4 or 5 passes? So you can see what the effect of the wrinkle tool is. These are some really unique and specialized tools for creating customized objects. So if there's a certain object you're trying to create, maybe one of these tools might be able to help you create just that. So in this lesson, we've looked at some different tools that Illustrator includes for reshaping objects. In the next lesson, we're going to continue on, and we're going to learn about the different drawing modes in Illustrator CS5.